Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Wall, Behind and Beyond. I am Phillip, your host. Today, we have two social documentary producers who focus mainly on issues dealing with the prison system. They are from Norway, a country that is considered to have the best correctional system in the world. So good, in fact, it has its own standard and is referred to as the Norwegian model. We wanted to speak with them so that we could share some aspects of this model with our listeners. We believe it is fiscally and socially beneficial to us here in the United States if we adopt this model as well. We have a problem with mass incarceration, and the only proof you need is that we have over 2 million people confined to our prisons at any given time. Try to let this sink in. We have more people in prison than any other country in the world combined. To me and to many others, this is untenable. So with that, I want to welcome both of our guests. Thank you for being here. Please tell the listeners your names, where you are from, and what made you want to get into this line of work.
Absolutely. I can start. I'm Tomas Lindh. At the moment, I'm stationed in Sweden. That is right next to Norway. Originally, I'm from Finland, so a small correction to the introduction, but otherwise, everything is perfectly in order. Together with John, we've been producing a lot of social documentaries regarding prisons and been visiting a lot of facilities in Sweden, in Norway, in Finland, in Denmark, also in the US. We've done several documentaries regarding the differences. The main overarching question perhaps is, the purpose of a facility like a prison. What is the purpose? To rehabilitate, to, as they say in Norway, create good neighbors, or to punish and sort of have a continuous punishment that goes on for the duration of the sentence, be it for life or for a shorter term. For me personally, I think that facilities and a prison is a very good mirror of society. How do we treat the people that we have full control over? And it's a facility and a process and a concept that really opens your eyes to a country and how we look at each other and the way we can improve incarceration and prisons. I think is a gateway how we can improve a lot of things in a society. Thanks for having me here, Philip. And over to you, John.
Great to be here as well. My name is John Stark, and just like Tomas, I'm also originally from Finland, but currently I live in Sweden. To continue from where Tomas left off, we've both been working for public service broadcasting companies, first in Finland, now in Sweden. So we work for companies that are non-profit and no advertising and so on. So that means that we can be completely free with our storytelling and so on, and focus on issues regarding society and criminal justice in our case. And it's been an exceptional journey that we've been on during the last few years. Just like Tomas said, having had the possibility and opportunity to visit some facilities, meeting persons, and actually seeing hands-on, and seeing on location what works in some prisons and what doesn't work, and what we could learn from each other. So that type of stories are what we're working on at the moment. So it's great to be here.
Thank both of you individuals for coming and sharing your insights and for clarifying some things, mainly where you're from, because I was under the assumption it was Norway. I want to get to what some of the things that you guys were saying. I think that the crime and punishment thing that we've been seeing play out, punishment versus rehabilitation has become a failed experiment. And here in the United States, because, it's referred to often as the prison industrial complex, they have made it into a business. And because of that, it's profitable in a lot of ways to a lot of stakeholders. Therefore, they're not trying to reimagine what it could be. We know that there's two or three other states in the United States who have begun trying to implement, but they're only scratching the surface, because as I read, I see that it's not in comparison to some of the things that I'm hearing and learning about what's going on in countries over in Scandinavia. So if I may, I want to get to the questions. Both of you can answer. How long has Norway and other Scandinavian countries been using this particular approach and model for how they do prisons?
It's going back, and these are things that we've come across in our research. With regards to Norway, the journey for them is well documented. Jan Strømnes, one of the main characters in one of our previous documentaries, Breaking the Cycle, described it like this: that in the 80s and early 90s, they had a lot of issues and problems with their facilities in Norway that were operating on a similar standard and with a similar, according to similar values that in the US, that it was punishment first. Rehabilitation wasn't really the main focus in the 80s and 90s in Norway. They had a lot of drugs in the prison. They had a lot of inmates with psychiatric problems. They had some riots. Escapes were not uncommon. And they had a very limited interaction between, COs and inmates. It was a facility that is, you can still see today in the US, where you are housing individuals that have committed crimes. They also had 2 murders on correctional officers happening in 1989 and in 1982, which sparked a debate in Norway that really boiled down to, 2 main roads forward. Either we increase the security, the physical security, and we make much more secure facilities, and we start to be tough on crime and tough on inmates and raise the level of hostility inside the prison in order to reduce the violence. Or we try a different route and we try to increase the security for staff, and we try our best to rehabilitate those who are incarcerated. It was a political decision, and it was unanimous in the government at the time. It was in 1997 or 1996. And they decided that let's move in a different direction. Let's go all in on the rehabilitation. Let's change the role of the correctional officer, that their main focus should be to help the inmate to live a life without crime. Not just, host and guard the facility and be responsible for everyone being present and count and so forth, but actively take a big role in helping the inmates to live a life without crime. And this was a very big shift in the policy. The Nordic countries, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, we moved together on a lot of these social issues. And originally, this train of thought came about in Finland in the 70s, was adopted into Norway slowly, and Sweden and Denmark. And now we all operate with this mindset and this road forward, that the function and the role and the purpose of a facility and a correctional officer should be to rehabilitate and to help the inmates to live a life without crime. As the saying goes, everyone that is in prison in the Nordic countries will be released one day. And we should be focusing on providing the society with good neighbors that are exiting the facilities when they have served their time. So that is really the backdrop and the history of how the changes came about in the Nordic countries, Norway, Denmark, Finland, and Sweden.
That's excellent. Absolutely. I love what you said about at some point everyone is going to get out of prison. and you want to focus on how to create a good neighbor as opposed to someone who's probably traumatized, feels defeated, indignified, and having all his humanity stripped from him. And so I love that answer. That gave us a lot of history in terms of why it began. One of the reasons why we have not come to the place where we need to be in the United States is because we try to meet bad behavior with a negative reaction. Like for an example, when you see that the system is going in a certain direction, instead of talking about solutions, we talk about tightening up on restrictions or tightening up on punishments, and locking people in solitary and giving them new charges, and we don't look for the solutions that address people's needs. So I just wanted to put that in there. But my next question for either of you is, did they face stiff opposition? And if so, are there still opponents of this model after seeing the results? Because you guys have positive results with a 20% recidivism rate. That's awesome.
There was quite a lot of opposition in the beginning, but like Tomas said, the decision in Norway was unanimous on a government level, and many leading figures within the Norwegian correctional services, they were definitely for this reform, but the opposition was mainly within the rank and file, correctional officers and so on, who were not used to of course not for natural reasons. They had served in their traditional role as correctional officers, guarding the facility and so on, maintaining the security. But this new role was more called like you're now supposed to be a so-called contact officer, which means that your work is perhaps more towards a social worker in the sense that your role is becoming more of helping your own inmates, since they're responsible for a few inmates per contact officer. So your role is, for example, to help that inmate to think about his or her way forward, what to study while incarcerated, what jobs could he or she find after the sentence has ended, and so on. And basically it's about talking, communicating all the time, and getting to know each other, to be personal but not private. But the main reason is to get close to one another, and friends don't hurt each other. That's one part of the whole philosophy. But that's a huge change in the role of from being a traditional correctional officer. So there was definitely some opposition. But from what we've experienced, Thomas, I don't think we've encountered much, if any, opposition in the Scandinavian countries during our visits there.
No, not really. And I could expand a little bit on what John said. The concept of dynamic security, which was what the correctional officer role was transformed into, to be not only responsible for the physical security, but also the physical security being barbed wire, walls, cells, locks, everything that is keeping inmates in their place, so to say. The dynamic security side was the more important one. That meant that as an officer, you had to interact with the people you are responsible for, talk to them, play cards with them, hang out, talk, get to know them. So a relationship can be formed. And this is called dynamic security because of the reason that if you know someone, you can immediately tell if that person is, feeling unwell, or if something's bothering the inmate in the morning, if they are frustrated about something. And that way you can spot these things that during a day or a week or a month can grow into something that become say, a violent solution, that something happened somewhere, there's a conflict, and it escalates, and eventually someone gets hurt. With dynamic security, the correctional officer can spot this very early on and indirectly provide a much more secure facility and a much more secure unit that the officers are responsible for. It's a very interesting concept that also lowers the stress levels for everyone involved, for the people incarcerated, but also for the correctional officers themselves. The working place becomes much better. And this was one of the arguments as well, that this change is for the better, not only for the people incarcerated, but also for you who are working inside a facility. You don't have to be looking over your shoulder all the time and be afraid, because
60 seconds remaining.
You've built a relationship.
Absolutely. I'm going to call back. That's the 20-minute, 60-second timer on the phone. We'll resume after this. This is our break. I'm going to get back on the other side of it. Hey, everybody. I just wanted to say, go to my website, grant parole to Phillip, grantparolletopillip.com, and scroll down. You'll see a link to donate for my legal fees, as I'm in need of a criminal attorney. I also have another link to donate to my GoFundMe for mental health expenses. Thank everybody for your support, and thank everybody for the love they've been showing me. I appreciate it. And God willing, it'll make a difference, and I'll be home soon. Okay, so I'm back on the other side. So I want to ask, so in places like Norway, Sweden, Finland, who would you say it is that sets the policies or makes the policies that you see have taken place over the years in the system over there? Would it be the DOC, the Department of Correction, the prison officials, or would it be the governor of the states, the individual cities that hold prisons?
No, it's definitely the equivalent body like the Department of Corrections. So it's governed by the countries or the states, but it's definitely not on a governor level. It's on a country or state level. So yeah.
And the policies themselves are policies that are decided by the government, that these are the ambitions, these are the money and funding available to achieve these goals, and these are the goals. And then a lot of decisions on how to proceed with this is done on the department level, so to say.
Mm-hmm. I hear that. Yeah, because that was a curiosity, because we're over here trying to figure out how the implementation can be sped up. Because we're at a crucible, we're at a very pressing point where so we have to do something about this problem. Here in the U.S., policies are made by like the Division of Corrections, the Department of Corrections, instead of by the public policy organizations. So they go for more and more disciplinary and punishment motivated policies, as opposed to what some consider parent and stick incentive models. And so I brought that up because I think once we find out how to get past the opposition, and once we get everyone on board from the governor on down, that we can make sweeping implementation instead of bits and pieces at a time. Because I see little things like they stopped calling us offenders at this particular facility and started calling us incarcerated individuals. I mean, that's cool, but that's just a Band-Aid. That's not nearly enough. We need programs and resources directed to different things, and we need a shift in how the correctional officers view and treat those who are overcharged.
I agree. I agree, and just to reinforce what you say. I mean, you mentioned a number of incarcerated people in the U.S. and we've been to enough facilities to see that there's, in my personal view, there's a lot of improvements that could be made, and there's a lot of good examples in elsewhere in the world that you can look at and see how can we implement that. And in fact, that is the what we are following now in a documentary series that is coming out in January 2023, where a small facility in Pennsylvania is trying to implement a lot of the concept of dynamic security, but also the concept of normality, that the punishment in itself is, the restriction of liberty, but other than that, you have a right to privacy and a toilet, and you get to cook your own food, and you get to interact with the officers, and you can build a relationship. And they are now trying to try out all these things that yield good and great results in the Nordic countries. So I think this could be relevant. I think what is needed is American and US examples of a different way, providing lower stress levels, a better working environment for staff, and yielding lower recidivism rates, and good results all around. And perhaps the Pennsylvania project can spark something. But I agree that there needs to be a lot of experiments at the moment in the US trying new things, because the old ways are not really working for anyone. CEOs in the US are not doing that great either on a mental health level and stress levels and so forth. So this is much needed.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with everything you said. I want to add that I was just telling an individual the other day that your loss of liberty is what the courts sentence you to, and that is your punishment. You shouldn't be sentenced to more than that. It's not a part of your original sentence. I mean, you shouldn't have the system pile on to that and create further mental health problems or trauma through the stress levels that goes on, because the system is functioning in a way that is not helpful to a person's mental health. Is there really a movement to see the Norwegian model of prisons here in the U.S.? If so, how do we get people to buy into it? Are there people that's really trying to push it to see these models come to the United States, or is it all on the United States ourselves to figure this out?
There is some cooperation, and there has been some cooperation between specifically Norway and the US going on for a while. For example, I think it's led from San Francisco. It's a program called Amend. They work in some states, especially on the West Coast, I think. We haven't been involved or worked with them, but there are some progressive governors and heads of departments of corrections. For example, in the state of Colorado, where you have Mr. Dean Williams, who previously was in Alaska, who has some great ideas inspired by Europe and by Scandinavia. So he's very progressive in that sense. But I do think continuing on from what Tomas said, the data is there. We know for a fact it's not a feeling, it's data that the toughest prisons have the highest rates of violence and high recidivism rates. So we all know that the tougher punishment methods don't work, and we know for a fact that correctional officers have higher levels of PTSD than war veterans and so on. So people are not doing well. Prisons are overcrowded, and there are too many inmates who are not doing well, and they're not being rehabilitated. So the system just isn't working. So if we can start from that fact, can we agree that the current system doesn't work, then we have to do something else. And like Tomas mentioned, the project we're following now in Pennsylvania certainly wants to try out something new, and we want to follow their journey to see, can a US facility inspired by Scandinavian methods, practices, and values actually work in an American context. It'll be interesting to see. But as I want to be optimistic and believe that when people actually see the results, people feel better and they get better results. Then I hope that it will spread, slowly but surely. That's what I hope personally.
Absolutely. Thank you for that answer. Well, to be honest, and in full disclosure, Washington State, where I am, actually has a progressive governor in place right now. So I don't think that it's a far stretch that this system in particular could pivot in the way that the Nordics prisons have. In fact, my organization, my nonprofit called Inside Outside Consults Inc., it's a part of our mission. It's a part of what we would like to see take place. It's one of the main things because I've done 31 years, and I want to see more programming. I want to see more mental health treatment. I want to see more positive and social interaction between staff, guards, and prisoners. And I want to see the humanity come into the system because that's the things that create, a pro-social mentality in people and make people feel good. Therefore, when they get out, they feel healthy. So thank you for sharing that. What was Norway's approach to the COVID-19 pandemic inside of the prisons?
For natural reasons, we did limited traveling to Norway and even less inside facilities during the pandemic. We were in Pennsylvania in March 2020. I think it was just 4 or 5 days before, everyone realized that this was really, really bad. I remember leaving JFK in the sense that what's going on, because we really managed to get home in the final seconds. But we've been having contact with Swedish facilities during the pandemic, and there has been a lot of restrictions in visiting, causing a lot of distress and a lot of anger inside the facilities. And I know that they've been struggling with that. I would assume, and I have heard that inside Norwegian facilities, it was the same, that they had to act fast and they had to lock the door and exclude, normal visiting, which is very frustrating. On a positive note, if we can bring something from the pandemic and the world of prison that is actually a positive, it really accelerated the implementation of new technology, that you could use Skype very easily and very conveniently, that you could have Zoom meeting, that you could, provide with technology as much relief as possible on a bigger scale than with physical meetings. And we visited Pennsylvania last fall when the pandemic was still ongoing, and spoke with a lot of people living there that it had been very frustrated. They called prison the worst place on earth to be in during a pandemic, with people being so close and no visitation and a big sense of uncertainty regarding your own health, but the health of your friends and families on the outside, and elderly relatives and so forth. So I would assume on a human level that the experiences were very similar, although the Nordic countries try to be more humane in a lot of senses. I think the pandemic really, it happened so fast and so was so unpredictable that the restrictions were in place also inside Swedish and Norwegian prisons.
Oh man, that's powerful. I know here, I had caught COVID 2 times. I had went on 3 different lockdowns. We've been dealing with it now for over 2 years. We still have to wear masks. They can't control it from entering the prisons because they don't have a way to enforce their officers to comply to some of the protocols out in society. And so it's going to keep coming in here. I'm fully boosted. A lot of people didn't take it, but I was just curious because I was wondering, are we ever going to figure out a way to deal with this pandemic, or this COVID-19 and these variants inside of these prisons, because the only way that I can see that we will remain unaffected is if we take and separate ourselves from those who come from outside to the inside. Yeah, they're here, but they don't have to be so close to us. But again, that goes against everything we're talking about now. We're trying to become more personal and socially aligned. So I just hope that in the future, we get a hold on this thing and we can get past it, and therefore we can get back to the work of trying to get the prisons where they should be here. So thank you for that answer. In terms of the work that you guys do, with your documentaries, I hear that you've been in Pennsylvania. I'm sure this can be duplicated here in the U.S. because of all the things that you guys have said so far. But we have to make the policymakers see the benefit of this complete overhaul. And so I hope that in the future we can work together, and maybe you guys can do a broader work in terms of putting together some documentary films that we could use when we go to lobby within our legislations and to our governors to take these proposals. Because my organization, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go straight to them with the facts and the data, and we're going to try to show them not only how it helps the states individually, how it helps the person the incarcerated person not to come back, but also how it impacts the state financially. You know what I'm saying? In a major way for taxpayers.
One of the beauties or good things with the current documentary we're filming in Pennsylvania is the fact that the whole project, the whole experiment, so to speak, is heavily researched from the get-go by a bunch of professors and researchers and academic staff. So they measure everything and they have tedious details of every step of the whole process. So if this experiment, so to speak, if it works, then they have more or less a blueprint of how it was made. If it doesn't work perfectly, then they can all go back and check, what could we have done differently and tweak something in order to make it even better the next time it's implemented somewhere else. And our work in the form of a 3-part documentary will actually show much of that process on a human level, what how people take these new thoughts to themselves and how and if they change and so on and what types of results this can yield. So this is an interesting experiment which will lean on a huge load of data, so it can be multiplied and copied to other places.
So, in you guys' opinion, why do you think the U.S. continues down this failed road of punishment beyond the loss of one's liberty? Because, as you say, we were sentenced to a loss of liberty, which is the punishment for the crime or the offense. So why do you think that they stick or continue down this failed path?
I only have theories and thoughts that I have accumulated during 10 years of working in this area and talking to people on both sides of the fence, those promoting tough on crime policies and also those promoting rehabilitation. And my personal opinion is that there is a sense and an understanding in the US that somehow the punishment of the person who hurt me is an important part for me to heal. That the system sort of assists and tries to help the victim by hurting the perpetrator even more. And in my opinion, I think that is not productive at all. We need to deal with grief and hurt and the loss of something in a different way than inflicting even more pain and hurt on another person. An interesting, in my opinion, an interesting fact from Norway is that 90% of the people who are incarcerated deal with some sort of issue, on a mental health problem level.
Remaining.
So we need to acknowledge that as well, that help is needed on both sides, but we can't combine it in an eye for an eye or, with a biblical revenge line of thinking. That is not going to be productive for anyone, and it's going to only yield more angry people down the road.
Okay, thank you very much for your answers, Thomas and John. We're at the end. I really appreciate your answers. In closing, I wanted to give you guys a chance to tell listeners all over the world, how can they get a hold of you? How can they check out some of your work? And also for you guys to give us a closing remark on what do you see happening in the near future in terms of short-term goals as for us to correct some of what we see is going wrong in our prison system here in the United States.
Thank you so much for inviting us over, Philip. And some of our work include a TV series called The Norden that is available for free on YouTube, I think. Breaking the Cycle can be found online at the moment. It was globally available on Netflix. Now you can find it on the on-demand server in Finland and on other places as well. It's called Breaking the Cycle. arenan.yle.fi if you want to Google it up. And our next documentary series is going to be released in the US early spring. We are shooting for January 2023. It's called The Prison Project, Little Scandinavia. Going forward, I would say that I am very optimistic, and there is an argument that I think is slowly starting to get hold of you in US policy and politics. And the policies and the politics in the US is very divided at the moment in two teams, really. And it seems impossible for them to agree on something, but they seem to be agreeing on prison reform, but with two very different angles. The Democrats seems to be recognizing the immense value of rehabilitation to get people back together in society in order to, pay taxes and contribute. The Republicans seems to recognize that in the end, it's a much cheaper affair to rehabilitate people and actually get them out to be productive again. And you have also some very conservative correctional officers that can recognize that a better working environment and a more stress-free working environment could be beneficial. So I'm an optimistic, but I think I can see some touching points where they actually can agree on some changes that will be beneficial for both sides. And working with, for 10 years with people working inside the prison system in the US, there are immensely smart and progressive people working there that really try and really know what they're doing. And I would say that the energy and the amount of people trying to change is growing. And I would be surprised if their energy and work and dedication and intelligence wouldn't lead to something. So I'm hopeful. John?
Very briefly, I wouldn't say that anyone is so naive to think that you can copy a system from Norway or Sweden to the US and try to make it work. But the most important thing is to pick some form of elements from a model that actually works here in Scandinavia and use those elements, adapt them to your own reality. For example, in Norway, the correctional officers have an education that lasts, I think, 3 years. In the US, it's perhaps 6 weeks or so. That's a huge difference. We can't extend the training, with 2 years, just like that. But you can change the content of the training of the correctional officers even during those 6 weeks. Less perhaps handling of weapons, more communication skills and so on. So you have to adapt this to your own reality. But I'm in the same camp as Tomas. I'm optimistic as well. So check us up on YouTube. If you check Breaking the Cycle or Little Scandinavia on YouTube, you can get a hold of us.
Thank you so much. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the information that you guys have shared, some of the links to some of these great works that break down the benefit of these models. And I'm going to try to share them with the governor of the state. I'm going to try to share them with some of the policy organizations, and also reach out to some of the organizations like AMEN, and try to see what we can do. It's all about getting started, one part at a time. We all can play a role, and that's why I had you guys come on. And I look forward to the future of having an extended show where we bring on ex-incarcerated individuals, some of the people in America and U.S. systems who have already started implementing along with you guys again, and just see where we're at, and where and how much progress is being made. So thank you very much for coming on, and I'm sure our listeners would love this episode because that's the elephant in the room. What I'm saying? What are we going to do about these prison issues that are making people worse as opposed to better? So thank you guys for coming on, and I appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Philip. Great work. Thanks for having us.